Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Adams Teaches English Language. In this video, I'm going to talk you through how to format a letter and what to include in each section. This is designed for the English language GCSE. Doesn't matter which spec you're doing. If there is the opportunity to write a letter, you might want to have a little look at this video and make sure that you're hitting all of those form points properly. So let's get started.
Okay, so let's just start off with how you lay out a letter. It's one of the easiest ways to show your examiner that you understand the genre that you're writing in. And it's very, very straightforward. Okay, so top right hand corner of your page is where you will write your name, your address, and the date. You know, don't obviously write down your own address, just make up one or just pop in the school's address, for example. Then on the left hand side, you're going to write their name and their address. Again, just make up an address. It's easy to do, you know, 1 Thompson Street, London, and then make up a postcode. Done. Yeah, so the easy way to remember this is if you imagine an envelope, yeah, an envelope will often have a clear screen, won't it? Like a little window pane. That's always on the left-hand side so that it can just pick up, if you fold it up and pop it in, the address of the person you're sending it to will be there. So you don't need to then write the address on the label. So that is how you remember to put their address on the left-hand side of the page. Underneath their address, you are going to write your salutation, and I've given you some examples up at the top. So, dear Mr. Thomas, or if it was a more informal letter and you might know the person, you might say, dear Susan, or whoever. If you don't know their names, you can say, dear sir or madam. Or if you want to be even broader than that, you can simply say, to whom it may concern. Okay, and that's your way of tackling all bases there. So to whom it may concern will work perfectly as well. Okay, then you're going to get into the main body of your letter. You should have an introductory paragraph, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Only a couple of sentences long. Now, don't misinterpret what I'm doing here. You'll notice I've said approximately 3. So then you're going to get your more developed paragraphs. So about 3, you know, 3 is enough to kind of set out a strong argument. You should include a concluding statement that perhaps has some sort of call to action for what the person you're writing to, what you want them to do. And again, I'll give you some examples of that in a moment. And then you can have your sign off. Now, here's the thing. If you know the person's name and have stated their name, dear Mr. Thomas, dear Susan, then you're going to sign off with yours sincerely. If you don't know the name of the person you're writing to and you've gone with a dear sir, madam, or to whom it may concern, you're going to go with yours faithfully. Then you pop your name. And, you know, if it was a typed letter, if that's how you're kind of imagining it being, you'd print your name a few sort of lines down and then you'd sign it in the space with your little signature. Okay, so that's the way that it should look. And if you get a letter task in your English language exam and you choose to do that one, do set it out as a letter. So your introductory paragraph is where you introduce the topic or the purpose or the aim of the letter. And most traditionally, people will start with a I am writing to. You know, I'm writing to express my concern regarding the lack of outdoor pursuits available to young people in the local area. Such a typical GCSE question. Or I'm writing in response to the letter that was published in The Guardian about obesity, or, you know, whatever it might be. You're not limited to that. You know, you can use more of a hook as long as you manage to maintain formality. Okay, that's the most important thing. Maintain formality and ensure that that opening couple of sentences does very clearly explain to the reader what the function of the letter is, why you're writing it. You're then going to move into your line of argument, right? So like I said, you're aiming to write 3-ish paragraphs. Now, whatever the letter, if the letter might be asking you to apply for something, to offer your views on something, to persuade someone, so whatever the topic is, aim for about 3 paragraphs where each paragraph is a new point, a new development. Okay, so it might be, for example, that the first paragraph outlines your concerns at, let's stick with the outdoor pursuits, your concerns at how little there is in the area. Your second paragraph might be what the impact of that little, those little few opportunities are. And your third paragraph might be solutions that they could put in place, for example. But however you structure it, make sure that you're guiding your reader through. So use discourse markers, particularly at the beginnings of the sentences. Easiest ones to do here are your firstly, secondly, thirdly. Very clear way of structuring your argument. And you can of course use other kind of connectives as well, moreover, additionally, consequentially, or ones to suggest you're moving to a different argument, in contrast, however, for example. Now, it's very important that you maintain an appropriate register. Notice that I'm not just saying formal, because if you were asked to write a letter, like an open letter to your peers in year 11 or whatever, then obviously you're going to be a little bit more informal than say you're writing to the local government or you're writing to the head teacher. But whatever the level of formality that you're pitching in at, one, make sure it's appropriate, but two, you still need to find a way to be engaging and compelling. You know, you still need to find that style that makes people want to read on. So you are going to use a range of devices to hook or persuade or inform your reader. Okay, letters are tricky because obviously you're not going to want to be like boom, boom, boom with alliteration and like overusing rhetorical questions, but there should still be something in there to keep the reader engaged. Concluding statement. Okay, this is where you want to have some sort of call to action, whether it is you want them to do something or you want them to consider you. So here are a couple of examples. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter. Always a good idea to be grateful. Even if you're writing a complaint letter, you're still going to say thank you for taking the time to consider my ideas, or, you know. So thank you for taking the time to read my letter. I hope you will consider me for the position of hotel manager, and I look forward to your response. Okay. Or if it was more of a complaining one, thank you for taking the time to consider my concerns. I look forward to receiving your response outlining your plans for the local area. So there's a suggestion of this is what you're now going to do. So it's a little like call to action. Last few little things from me, a couple of do's and don'ts. So do write a developed response. Quite often people choose the letter and think, oh, well, you know, I'll fill up the page with the addresses. I won't have to write that much. You've got to remember, this is a big chunk of your GCSE. You need to show what you can do. So do still write a developed response. That's why I'm saying introductory paragraph and then a good 3 developed arguments before your concluding one. And if you can write 4 or more, even better. So do set it out as a letter. Show your examiner that you know how to do it. Like I said, use a school address or make one up. Don't make up a silly name or a silly address. Like if there's that tiny little part of you that wants to kind of have a little giggle in the exam, or you have the mad thought that perhaps an examiner might appreciate a little joke address, just don't do it. Don't do it. Please, please, please don't do it. Maintain that appropriately formal register depending on who you're writing to. And then, like I said, do use some devices to make your writing compelling, but don't overwrite. Because, for example, if you're being asked to write a letter applying for a job, yeah, you've got to imagine that you really are doing it. And so, for example, you're not going to sort of ask loads of rhetorical questions like, who wouldn't want a guy like me working in their hotel? Because no one would ever write that. You know, like that kind of direct address when writing a letter of application is sort of not quite on. And likewise, sometimes people take the emotive language. Let's say, for example, that you're writing a letter of complaint. Now, if you're writing a letter of complaint, the idea is that you want to have action taken, and insulting the reader is not the way to do it. So sometimes people get carried away with emotive language and direct address and rhetorical questions. You've got to ask yourself the simple question, would a human being actually write this letter? And if the answer is no, tone it down. Okay, use devices to be compelling and engaging and persuasive, but don't go over the top. I hope that was helpful. I always feel really bad when saying that. You know, I would say if you want to use the full range of rhetorical devices and you want to have fun, then make sure you choose something like an article or a speech where you're given that little bit more free rein. That's what I would say. That's it from me. I hope that was helpful. Little guided tour to the letter. Give me a shout if you've got any questions in the comments and I will get back to you. But otherwise, happy revising.